The morning air carries a chill that clings to the windows of this small-town diner. Inside, steam rises from chipped ceramic mugs, curling in the slanted sunlight that filters through lace curtains. The place is quiet but not silent. The scrape of a fork on a plate, the soft shuffle of boots across the floor, the hum of an old ceiling fan. Ordinary sounds, stitched together like threads in a life no one pays attention to. At the corner table, a man sits with his hands folded around a cup of coffee he hasn't yet touched. Michael Harrington, his name known in boardrooms and news articles, looks out through the glass at nothing in particular. His suit jacket is draped neatly over the chair beside him, his tie pulled loose. The phone on the table vibrates once, then again. He doesn't pick it up. The silence in his head feels heavier than the noise of the world outside. He tells himself he has 5 minutes, no more, before he drives on to the city. 5 minutes to sip coffee, gather his thoughts, and remind himself of the day's importance. Deals to secure, numbers to memorize, smiles to wear like armor. But in this quiet, something unexpected happens. From across the diner, the door creaks open, letting in a burst of air that smells faintly of rain-soaked asphalt. A woman steps in, her shoes worn thin, her coat faded to the color of dust. She pauses just inside, clutching a bundle wrapped in a cloth, something she holds with care, as though it might break. Her hair is silver, untamed, falling across her face in strands she doesn't bother to smooth. The waitress calls softly, "Morning, Evelyn," as though greeting an old regular. The woman nods, barely lifting her gaze, and takes a seat near the window. She sets her bundle on the table with deliberate slowness. When the cloth folds away, the scent drifts across the room, sweet, warm, unmistakable. Strawberry pie, freshly baked. Michael shifts in his seat without meaning to. His fingers tighten around the cup. The smell is sudden, intrusive, cutting through the bitter coffee and the metallic tang of his thoughts. He feels it before he understands it, an ache, low and deep, as if something long buried has stirred awake. He takes a breath, too sharp, too shallow. His eyes follow the steam rising from her pie, curling like the steam from his untouched coffee. The two scents mingle in the air, ordinary but layered with something that makes him pause. Something unsettling. Evelyn doesn't look around. She keeps her gaze steady on the pie, her lips moving in words no one hears. Maybe a prayer, maybe just a whisper to herself. Her hands, weathered and trembling, rest flat on the table, as though steadying not just the pie, but her own body. Michael looks away quickly, out the window again, but the glass only reflects back his own face, drawn, tired, lined more heavily than he ever admits. He tries to think of the meeting ahead, of contracts and signatures, but the smell lingers, relentless. A child's voice breaks the silence. From a booth behind him, a little boy tugs at his mother's sleeve and asks, "Can we have pie, Mama?" His words are small, unpolished, but they land like stones in water. The boy isn't looking at the menu, he's staring at Evelyn's table, at the pie she hasn't touched. The mother hushes him gently, "Not now," and ruffles his hair. The boy's disappointment is quick, forgotten as he turns back to his coloring book. But Michael feels it, the way those few words carry weight, the way they brush against something raw inside him. He realizes his hand is still tight around the cup. He sets it down, carefully, as though it might shatter. The coffee inside has gone lukewarm. For a moment the air seems thinner, the hum of the fan louder, the pie's sweetness sharper, ordinary details, yet they tilt the ground beneath him. He tells himself it's nothing, just coincidence. Just a smell, just a stranger, just a child's voice. But he cannot unhear the words, he cannot unsmell the pie, and he cannot shake the quiet ache that has begun to press against his chest. The diner door closes with a soft thud behind Evelyn, the sound swallowed by the hum of morning. She doesn't sit where she usually does. Instead she lingers near the window, her hands cradling the bundle she carried in. The cloth is loosened just enough to let the scent escape, filling the room with something warm, something that doesn't quite belong in a place where most mornings smell of bacon grease and burnt toast. Michael feels it again, that quiet tug in his chest, sharper now. His phone vibrates against the table. He flips it over without looking at the screen. He doesn't want to see another reminder of the world waiting for him outside. Not right now. The waitress, a woman with tired eyes and a kind smile, passes by his table. She glances at Evelyn, then at him, as though expecting him to notice. "Fresh pie," she says softly, almost as a thought more than a statement. Then she moves on, balancing a tray of scrambled eggs and toast for the booth near the counter. Michael lets the words sit. Fresh pie, simple, unremarkable. And yet his jaw tightens, the muscles stiffening as though bracing against something unseen. He lifts the coffee at last, but when he sips it, the bitterness bites against the sweetness lingering in the air. The contrast unsettles him. Evelyn finally lifts her head. Her eyes search the room, not quickly, not urgently, but as if she's waiting for something she's half afraid won't come. They land on Michael. For a moment she studies him with a stillness that makes him shift slightly in his chair. Then she speaks. Her voice is soft, a little rough at the edges, but steady. "Hey son." The sound folds the air in half. Forks pause, conversations hush, the hum of the fan seems louder. Michael freezes, his hand suspended in the air with the cup halfway to his mouth. Evelyn's eyes don't waver. "Do you still like strawberry pie?" The diner holds its breath. A truck rumbles past outside, its sound distant, detached, irrelevant compared to the silence pressing inside. Michael lowers the cup slowly, careful not to clatter it against the saucer. He clears his throat, but no words come. His first instinct is denial, a stranger. A mistake, confusion, yet his fingers twitch against the ceramic, a small tremor betraying the calm expression he forces onto his face. Someone in the booth behind him murmurs, "Did she say son?" A child whispers, "She's talking to him." Small voices ripple through the quiet. Michael looks at Evelyn directly now. Her hair falls unevenly across her cheeks, her coat worn, her hands trembling faintly against the table. But her eyes, there is something steady there, something unyielding, as though she knows him in a way no one else in the room could. He opens his mouth. His voice is low, clipped. "You're mistaken." The words taste hollow, even as he says them. Evelyn doesn't flinch, she only tilts her head slightly, like someone listening for a note in a song. "Mistaken," she repeats, her tone not accusing, not defensive, but curious. Michael looks away first, his gaze sliding toward the window where the glass reflects his own sharp suit, his controlled posture. He tries to anchor himself in that image, but the reflection wavers, blurred by the sunlight and the faint condensation on the glass. The pie between them cools silently, the crust glistens faintly under the light, berries peeking through, their color deep and red. The smell seems stronger now, carried on the small current of air from the fan above. He swallows hard. His chest feels tight, though he doesn't want to admit it. He tells himself it's irritation, nothing more, but somewhere inside, a question stirs, the kind he hasn't let himself ask in years. From across the diner, a young boy's voice drifts again. "Mama, is that man her son?" The mother hushes him quickly, embarrassed, but the question lingers. Michael feels the weight of it pressing against his ribs. His jaw locks tighter, he pushes his chair back slightly, enough to signal the conversation is over. But Evelyn doesn't turn away, her hands rest gently on the pie, her fingers curling against the cloth, as if she's holding on to something fragile. She doesn't push, doesn't plead. She only waits, her eyes steady, her presence quiet, but unshakable. Michael reaches for his jacket, the fabric is smooth beneath his fingers, a texture too polished, too controlled, compared to the raw, imperfect presence across the room. His breath catches briefly, though he masks it with a slow exhale. The waitress sets down a plate at a nearby booth, and glances his way again. Her expression is neutral, but her eyes soften slightly, as if she knows something he doesn't want her to. Michael stands, his movements precise, practiced. He slides his phone into his pocket, shrugs into his jacket, and prepares to walk out. Yet before he steps away, he looks once more at Evelyn. Her eyes remain on him, unwavering, carrying a quiet recognition he cannot explain. And then, almost against his will, his gaze drops to the pie. The steam has thinned now, but the smell lingers, binding him to a memory he cannot name. His throat tightens. He swallows it down, he leaves the cup untouched on the table. The bell above the diner door jingles softly as Michael steps out, but the sound doesn't release him. It follows him onto the street, faint as an echo he can't shake. His shoes click against the pavement, measured and deliberate, yet inside him, something unsettled resists the rhythm. He pauses by his car, the black sedan parked neatly at the curb, polished enough to mirror the sky. His reflection stares back from the window, tailored suit, composed stance, jaw locked in the way he's trained it to be for years. A man who commands rooms, who signs contracts worth more than most people's lifetimes. And yet, that voice, soft, fragile, calling him son, that question about strawberry pie. He exhales through his nose, sharp and quick. Nonsense, he tells himself. Coincidence, delusion. She sees a stranger and builds a story around him, but when he closes his eyes, even for a moment, the image flashes uninvited. A kitchen bathed in warm afternoon light, red-checked curtains, swaying at the window, the air thick with the scent of strawberries and sugar. His fingers twitch against the car door handle. He opens his eyes quickly, as though the memory itself might be caught in the act of sneaking in. He's not sure if it's real, or if his mind, shaken by her words, is weaving something from scraps of imagination. Behind him, the diner hums back to life, the murmur of voices rising, a laugh. A scrape of a chair. He should leave. He should drive to the city, to the meeting waiting for him. But his feet stay planted. A small group of schoolchildren walk past on the opposite sidewalk, their backpacks bouncing, their voices light with the careless joy of morning. One of them carries a lunchbox covered in cartoon stickers. Another pulls a piece of candy from his pocket and offers it to the others. The simple exchange, sweetness shared without hesitation, stirs something sharp in Michael's chest. He remembers, or perhaps only imagines, a boy at a table, swinging his legs, waiting impatiently for a pie to cool. Is it ready yet? A woman's laugh, gentle and amused, answering, not until the steam fades, or you'll burn your tongue. Michael inhales sharply, the air catching. He presses his hand against the car roof, the metal cool against his palm. Where did that come from, he wonders. He doesn't trust the memory, doesn't trust his own mind. Yet the detail, the impatience of the boy, the teasing cadence of the woman's voice, feels too precise to be fabricated in this moment. The sound of the diner door opening draws his attention. He glances back instinctively. Evelyn is there, framed in the doorway, the pie still resting on her table inside. She doesn't step out. She only stands, watching. Her coat hangs loosely, her posture fragile, but her gaze steady. Michael looks away quickly, pulling his phone from his pocket. The screen lights up with a flood of emails, notifications, reminders of the world he belongs to. He scrolls aimlessly, his thumb moving without intention. The words blur. Numbers, dates, names, none of it anchors him. He slides the phone back into his pocket and leans against the car. His breath is uneven, though he tries to steady it. The faint sweetness of strawberries drifts from the open diner door, threading through the air like a tether. He clenches his jaw. It's just a smell, he tells himself, just a pie, nothing more. But the memory lingers. The kitchen, the laughter. The scar on his hand, he glances down at it now, faint but present, a thin pale line across the skin. Evelyn's words return. Do you still like strawberry pie? His hand curls into a fist, then relaxes slowly. A passerby, a man in overalls, carrying a bag of groceries, nods politely as he walks by. Morning. Michael responds with a curt nod. His voice doesn't rise. He can't bring himself to speak. The ordinary kindness of the greeting feels like another stone added to the weight already pressing inside him. He opens the car door, slides into the seat, and rests his hands on the steering wheel. For a moment, he doesn't start the engine. He simply sits, staring through the windshield at the quiet street. His reflection overlays the town outside, two worlds blurred together. He thinks of Evelyn's hands, trembling but careful as she unwrapped the pie. He thinks of the way she looked at him, not with the sharp hunger of someone begging, but with the quiet steadiness of someone remembering. Someone certain. His stomach knots. He shakes his head once, as if to dismiss it, and finally starts the car. The engine's low hum fills the silence, drowning out the fragile memory pressing at the edges of his mind. He pulls away from the curb. The diner shrinks in the rearview mirror, its lace curtains fluttering faintly, the door closing again as Evelyn steps back inside. Michael grips the wheel tighter. The city awaits. Meetings, contracts, the life he has built, brick by brick. But somewhere between the vibrations of the tires and the hum of the road, the sweetness of strawberry pie lingers, refusing to be left behind. Michael doesn't return right away. He drives the highway, mile after mile, until the skyline of the city rises ahead. Glass towers catch the sun, sharp and gleaming, a reflection of the life he has built. Yet somewhere behind him, in that diner, an old woman still sits by a window with a pie cooling on the table. The thought won't leave. It clings like smoke, thin but impossible to ignore. By the time he parks at the towering office building, his chest feels tight. He dismisses it as stress, though even as he rides the elevator to the top floor, the memory presses in. The softness of her voice, the steady way she had looked at him. "Hey son, do you still like strawberry pie?" He lasts through only part of the morning. Numbers blur on the presentation screen. Colleagues drone about quarterly margins and projections. He finds himself staring at the reflection of his own face in the polished table, the scar faint on his hand where it rests against the leather folder. His mind drifts to the diner, to Evelyn's trembling fingers on the cloth that wrapped the pie. Before noon he excuses himself. He doesn't give reasons. He simply leaves. The diner is quieter now, the breakfast rush faded, the lunchtime crowd not yet arrived. The air inside is warmer than he remembered, heavy with the smell of coffee and faintly of sugar. Evelyn is still there, seated at the same table near the window. The pie remains untouched, though the crust has lost its sheen, the berries no longer steaming. She looks up as the door closes behind him. Her gaze doesn't startle, doesn't change. It's as if she expected him. Michael approaches slowly, each step deliberate, as though the floor might give way beneath him. When he reaches her table, he hesitates, then lowers himself into the chair across from her. For a moment, neither speaks. The hum of the ceiling fan fills the silence. A man at the counter sips his coffee without looking their way. The waitress wipes down a booth in the corner, humming softly under her breath. Finally, Evelyn's voice breaks through. It is quiet but steady. "I used to bake one every spring," she says, her eyes drifting toward the pie. Strawberry was always his favorite. The boy would sit at the table, waiting, legs swinging because he couldn't reach the floor. Couldn't wait for it to cool. Michael says nothing. His throat feels too tight. She continues, her gaze unfocused now, as though the diner walls have fallen away and she's speaking into another time. Life was different then. There was laughter in the house. A husband who came home tired but smiling. A boy who filled every corner with noise. Her lips tremble briefly, but she steadies herself with a slow breath. Then it changed. Too quick, too cruel. Michael shifts slightly, the leather of his seat creaking under the movement. He doesn't want to ask, but the question slips out, low and flat. "What happened?" Her eyes find his again, and for a moment, he feels pinned beneath the weight of them. "He was taken," she says simply. "Family said they'd give him a better life, said I couldn't manage." Her hands fold together tightly, knuckles pale. "I lost my home. My husband had already gone, and so I was left with memories, with pies baked for birthdays no one came to share." Michael looks down at the table. The wood is worn, faint scratches crisscrossing the surface. His reflection in the gloss looks older, more fragile than he expects. He doesn't trust himself to speak. The silence stretches. Evelyn does not press. She simply sits with him, her presence calm, patient, like someone who has spent years waiting and has learned the art of quiet endurance. From the corner booth, a child's laughter breaks the stillness. A little girl giggles as her grandfather shows her how to stack creamers into a tower. One slips, toppling the others, and she claps her hands with delight. The sound is light, unburdened, and it pierces Michael more deeply than Evelyn's words. He remembers, or perhaps imagines, a laugh like that in another kitchen, a boy's laugh rising above the clatter of plates. His fingers twitch against the table. He wants to push back, to dismiss, to call it delusion. Yet the image refuses to release him. Evelyn's voice comes again, softer now. "I know I don't look like much. Years on the street will do that. People stop seeing you after a while. But a mother," she pauses. Her breath trembling before she steadies it, "a mother doesn't stop seeing her child." Michael lifts his gaze slowly. Her eyes hold no accusation, only a quiet certainty that unsettles him more than anger ever could. He inhales, the air thick and heavy. "You're mistaken," he says again, but the words feel weaker this time, less certain. Evelyn only smiles faintly, tired but unbroken. She doesn't argue, she doesn't insist. She simply rests her hands near the pie, her fingers brushing lightly against the crust, as if to remind herself it is real. Michael leans back, pressing a hand against his jaw. His chest feels tight, his thoughts frayed. The scent of strawberries lingers, faint but insistent, weaving into the cracks of his composure. Outside, a breeze stirs the branches of the trees lining the street. The leaves flutter, catching the light, casting shifting patterns across the diner floor. Ordinary, fleeting, but Michael feels the change, small, almost imperceptible, yet enough to make him pause. He doesn't know what to believe, but he cannot ignore the way his heart has quickened, the way his breath has caught, the way the world feels slightly different now than it did this morning. Michael sits across from Evelyn, the silence stretched thin between them. His phone buzzes again, in his jacket pocket. A faint vibration, steady and insistent, like a reminder tugging at him. He doesn't reach for it, not yet, but the sound makes his jaw tighten, and his eyes flick briefly toward the door, as though escape is only a step away. Evelyn doesn't move. She sits quietly, her hands folded in her lap now, her gaze lingering not on him but on the pie that rests untouched on the table. The crust has dulled, no longer shining with the gloss of fresh sugar, but the scent still carries. Subtle, warm, sweet, it threads through the air with a patience his world rarely allows. The contrast unsettles him. He lives by schedules, minutes measured against profit margins, days stacked with meetings and decisions. His world is sleek, efficient, fast. Here in this diner, time feels different. Slower, looser, every detail, sunlight slipping across the floor, the steady hum of the fan, the faint clink of dishes in the kitchen, seems to resist the urgency that drives him. His fingers twitch against the table edge. He feels the pull of his life beyond these walls, the one defined by glass towers and sharp suits. Yet Evelyn's stillness drags him into something else, something quieter. It feels foreign and dangerous. She speaks at last, her voice gentle but steady. "You look tired." The words are simple, ordinary, but they land heavier than he expects. He almost laughs. Tired is a word he hasn't allowed himself in years. He doesn't say it. Instead, he adjusts his cuff, straightens his tie, and answers flatly, "I'm fine." Evelyn nods, as though she knows better. Fine is what people say when they're not. Michael's gaze sharpens, though his voice remains calm. "You don't know me." Her eyes meet his again. They're soft, but there's something unyielding in them, like stone beneath water. "Maybe not the man sitting here now," she says quietly, "but I knew the boy once." His chest tightens. He looks away quickly, out the window where the street is lined with parked cars and worn storefronts. A teenager rides past on a bicycle, balancing a brown paper bag on the handlebars. Two women stand outside the post office, talking with their arms crossed, their laughter carrying faintly across the street. Life here is small, ordinary, uncomplicated. It grates against the sleek, relentless rhythm of the city that waits for him. The phone buzzes again. This time, he pulls it out. The screen lights his face, emails, messages, a reminder for a call in 15 minutes. He scrolls quickly, his thumb flicking across the screen. The numbers, the names, the tasks, they should anchor him. They usually do, but here they feel like static, thin and meaningless against the quiet weight of the moment. He sets the phone face down on the table, his hand lingering on it a second longer than needed. "Always in a hurry," Evelyn murmurs. Not accusing, just observing. Michael exhales slowly through his nose. "That's how the world works." "Not the whole world," she replies. Her words hang between them, simple but heavy. He wants to dismiss them, to call them naive, the perspective of someone who has lived too far outside the machinery of power and wealth. Yet something in him resists speaking. Instead, he presses his fingers together, his gaze locked on the faint scratches carved into the tabletop. The waitress passes by, setting down a refill of coffee for another customer. She glances briefly at him, then at Evelyn, her expression unreadable. Her voice is light when she tells a man at the counter, "Weather's turning warmer this week." Ordinary talk, but Michael feels the weight of its simplicity. He cannot remember the last time he cared about something as small as the weather. His chest aches, though he tells himself it's just the pressure of being pulled in two directions. One world built of contracts and skyscrapers, the other of pies cooling in diners and strangers who look at him like they see someone else. Evelyn leans forward slightly. Her hands rest near the pie again, fingertips brushing the crust as if to steady herself. It's a simple thing, she says softly. Pie, just flour, sugar, fruit. But sometimes the smallest things stay with you the longest. Michael swallows hard. His throat feels dry, though he hasn't spoken. He knows she's right. He can feel it in the way that smell clings to him, stirring something he cannot shake. He hates the vulnerability of it, the way a simple scent can pierce through all the armor he has built. He straightens abruptly, his chair legs scraping faintly against the floor. The sound turns a few heads. Evelyn doesn't flinch. I don't have time for this, he says, his voice low, controlled. Her reply is quiet. Time is all we ever really have. For a moment, he feels the air shift, heavy and sharp. He wants to walk out, to leave her words behind with the fading scent of strawberries. And yet, when he reaches for his phone, his hand lingers above it, trembling slightly. He forces himself to pick it up. His thumb hovers over the screen, but he doesn't unlock it. Instead, he looks at Evelyn one last time. Her eyes hold steady, soft but unyielding, as though she knows he's already carrying something he cannot put down. The diner around them hums on, quiet, ordinary, unchanged, but Michael feels altered, as though the rhythm of his world has been interrupted in a way he cannot quite repair. Michael doesn't leave the diner right away. He tells himself he will. He even gathers his jacket and slides the phone back into his pocket. But his feet hesitate, his body reluctant in a way his mind refuses to acknowledge. He lingers, caught between the impulse to escape and the strange gravity of Evelyn's presence. Evelyn watches him quietly, her hands resting still on the table. She doesn't press, doesn't plead. Her silence unnerves him more than her words. It feels like patience, dangerous patience, the kind that waits for walls to crumble on their own. Finally, he turns to go. He takes a few steps toward the door, the air cooler near the entrance. He reaches out, fingers grazing the handle, and then, a sound interrupts him, the scrape of a chair against the floor. He glances back. Evelyn hasn't moved, but her eyes are fixed on him, steady and knowing. She lifts one trembling hand and points toward his own. Michael follows her gaze. His hand rests on the door handle, and the light catches the faint line across his skin, a pale scar, thin but undeniable. He's lived with it for years, forgotten it most days. A relic of a childhood he never bothers to recall, but under her gaze, the memory stirs, like a shadow shifting. You burned it, Evelyn says softly, her voice barely more than a whisper. You tried to grab the pan before it cooled. You were too eager, always too eager. The words slice through him, his grip tightens on the handle, but his knuckles loosen almost immediately, as if his body itself recoils from the truth hidden in her voice. He swallows hard, the muscles in his throat straining. Coincidence, he mutters. His voice doesn't carry conviction. Evelyn lowers her hand slowly, letting it rest back against the table. She doesn't argue, she doesn't need to. The way she looked at him, the quiet certainty in her tone, it burrows deeper than any demand could. Michael pushes the door open and steps outside, the bell chiming behind him. The sound feels louder than before, almost accusing. The street is brighter now, sunlight spilling across the pavement. He slips his sunglasses on quickly, more to shield himself than to block the light. His car waits at the curb, polished, precise, familiar. He unlocks it with a click and slides inside, shutting the door with a solid thud. For a moment he sits still, his hands gripping the wheel. His pulse beats fast, too fast for the stillness of the car. He inhales deeply, but the breath comes shallow, uneven. He tells himself it doesn't matter. She's a stranger, delusional, homeless, clinging to scraps of memory and attaching them to whoever passes by. That's all, that must be all. But when he glances at his hand on the steering wheel, the scar stares back at him, faint but undeniable. His thumb brushes against it unconsciously, tracing the line as if testing whether it's real. And the smell, God, the smell, it lingers, faint on his clothes, as though it followed him out of the diner. Strawberries, sugar, flour. He shakes his head sharply, as if to scatter the thought. He starts the engine, the low hum fills the silence, grounding him. He pulls into the street. His eyes fixed on the road ahead, yet the world around him feels different. Every detail stands out with unsettling clarity. A child skipping across the crosswalk, clutching a paper bag that rustles with pastries. A woman standing at a bus stop, adjusting her scarf against the breeze. The faint laughter of two teenagers passing by on bicycles. Ordinary things. But they feel sharper now, brighter, as though the world itself is demanding his attention in ways it never has before. At the office tower, he steps into the elevator, surrounded by polished suits and hushed conversations. His colleagues scroll their phones, their reflections bouncing off the mirrored walls. Normally, this is his element. Controlled, predictable, efficient, but today, the hum of the elevator feels suffocating, the mirrored walls too confining. He adjusts his tie, though it doesn't need adjusting. His hand brushes the scar again, unconsciously. He pulls it back quickly, curling his fingers into a fist. When the doors open, he strides out with practiced precision. He moves through the lobby, past assistants and receptionists, who greet him with polite nods. He answers with curt acknowledgments, his voice steady, his expression composed. But inside, his thoughts unravel, looping back again and again to the diner, the pie, the scar. In the boardroom, he sits at the long table, the city sprawling through the glass behind him. Charts are displayed on the screen, voices discuss numbers, strategies, projections. He should be focused, this is his realm, but the words blur. He sees the pie instead, the crust breaking under a fork, the red filling staining porcelain plates. He hears Evelyn's voice, "Do you still like strawberry pie?" His pen slips from his hand and clatters softly against the table. Heads turn briefly, then look away, returning to their notes. To them it's nothing, but to him, the sound echoes. He clears his throat, straightens his folder, and forces his gaze onto the presentation, but the numbers swim, refusing to settle into meaning. He hears instead, the scrape of a chair, the quiet certainty in Evelyn's voice, the weight of her eyes on his scar. His chest tightens. He shifts in his seat, the leather creaking under the movement. He can feel the unraveling inside him, threads tugged loose by something he cannot control, and for the first time in years, Michael Harrington does not feel certain of who he is. The boardroom empties slowly, chairs scraping back one by one as colleagues gather their papers and devices. Michael remains seated, staring at the polished table where his reflection swims faintly in the sheen. He has contributed little, only short nods, a few clipped words, but no one questions him. His presence alone usually bends the room. Today, however, his authority feels thinner, like a fabric stretched to its limit. When the last door closes, the silence is heavy. He presses his palms flat against the table, and exhales, steady but shallow. The scar catches his eye again, a pale line etched across his hand. Evelyn's words echo, uninvited, "You tried to grab the pan before it cooled." He clenches his fist quickly, shutting the memory away. He rises, movements brisk, jacket swung over his shoulder. He doesn't wait for his assistant's questions as he passes. The elevator hums down to the lobby, the mirrored walls reflecting a man who looks composed, but feels frayed at the edges. Outside, the city air is warmer, tinged with exhaust, and the faint sweetness of street vendors grilling meat. He steps into his car, shutting the door with a deliberate thud. The noise seals him in, but the silence inside feels no safer. His chest is tight, he grips the wheel hard, trying to steady himself. She's wrong, he tells himself. A delusion. She saw a scar and built a story. People like her, they see what they want to see, but his own mind betrays him. Images flicker without permission. Sunlight in a small kitchen, laughter echoing against faded wallpaper, the sharp sting of touching a hot pan before being swept into arms that smelled faintly of flour. He tells himself, it isn't memory, just imagination, just suggestion. His phone buzzes. A new message from the chairman, "Need you on the evening call, critical investors." Michael stares at the words, his thumb hovering, then almost impulsively, he switches the phone off. The screen goes black, his reflection staring back at him in the glass. For the first time in years, he silences the constant pull of his empire. He drives, but not toward the office, or the hotel waiting for him, with its polished glass and muted carpets. He finds himself heading back toward the highway, toward the small town he left hours ago. The sun slants lower now, shadows stretching across the road. He tells himself he just wants closure. To prove to himself it's nothing, to hear her words again and know they don't belong to him. The diner is quieter in the late afternoon. The bell above the door jingles as he steps inside, the sound too gentle for the weight in his chest. Evelyn is still there, the pie remains untouched, though the crust has dulled further, edges sinking slightly with time. She looks up at him, her expression unchanged. No surprise, no triumph. Only that same patient steadiness, as if she knew he would return. Michael doesn't sit this time. He stands near the table, his voice firm, controlled. You've made a mistake. Her gaze doesn't waver. Mistakes fade, she says softly. But some things don't. He exhales sharply, a hint of frustration breaking through. You don't know me. You don't know anything about me. She tilts her head slightly, her voice low. I know the scar. I know the way you hold your breath when you smell strawberries. His chest tightens. He shakes his head quickly, as if shaking off rain. That doesn't mean anything. Evelyn doesn't argue. She lowers her gaze to the pie, her fingers brushing lightly against the crust. The gesture is so small, so ordinary, but it pulls at him. He hates that it does. The waitress passes by, balancing a tray. She glances at them, her expression unreadable. Then almost gently, she says to Evelyn, "Need anything else, Anna?" Evelyn shakes her head with a faint smile. "No thank you." The exchange is ordinary, warm. Michael feels the contrast sharply, the softness of their tone against the steel edge of his own words. He presses his hand into his pocket, his thumb rubbing unconsciously against the scar again. He turns away abruptly, striding to the door. The bell chimes as he pushes it open. Outside the air is cooler, touched with the scent of cut grass. He walks quickly to his car, his breath shallow, clipped. He gets in, slamming the door harder than needed. His hand trembles faintly on the wheel, and he grips it tighter to steady himself. It's nothing, she's no one, just an old woman clinging to ghosts. He starts the engine, the hum filling the car. He pulls into the street, determined to put distance between himself and the diner. The buildings slide past, the road stretching ahead, yet the ache in his chest remains, stubborn, unrelenting. The smell lingers still, faint on his clothes. Sweet, warm, unmistakable. He grips the wheel tighter, as if force alone could drive it away. The evening descends slowly over the city, the glass towers catching the last of the sun before sinking into shadow. Michael sits at the head of a long conference table, his colleagues' voices blending into a dull hum. Numbers flash across the projection screen, charts rising and falling like waves. Ordinarily, this is where he thrives, the arena where control is everything. Tonight he feels elsewhere. His pen rests motionless on the pad before him. The words and figures being discussed blur into static. He hears his name called once, then again. He nods vaguely, offering a clipped response that seems to satisfy them, though he hasn't followed the thread of conversation. Beneath the table, his hand curls into a fist, pressing against the scar on his palm. The memory comes uninvited. A boy reaching for a hot pan, pain sharp, tears spilling, then arms wrapping around him. A soft voice murmuring, "It's all right, you'll heal." The memory feels too vivid to dismiss, too anchored to be imagination. He shifts in his chair, his breath unsteady. A colleague leans closer, whispering, "Are you with us, Michael?" "Yes," he replies quickly, sharper than intended. Heads turn, he straightens his tie, clears his throat, and gestures to continue. But inside, his composure frays further. The meeting stretches on, the minutes heavy. At last, as the discussion circles back over details already spoken, Michael pushes back his chair. The leather groans faintly under the sudden movement. "Excuse me," he mutters, rising before anyone can stop him. He leaves the room, the echo of his footsteps, swallowed by the thick carpet of the hallway. The door closes behind him, shutting out the voices, the numbers, the empire. In the elevator, alone, the mirrored walls reflect him from every angle. He avoids his own eyes. His chest feels tight, each breath shallow. He pulls his phone from his pocket, meaning to distract himself, to anchor himself in the familiar flood of messages. But when the screen lights up, the words blur. Investors, deadlines, reminders. He switches the phone off again. The reflection of his face stares back from the darkened glass, sharper lines etched by exhaustion, by something heavier than exhaustion. The car ride is a blur. He barely remembers the drive, only the pull in his chest guiding him, relentless. Streetlights flicker past like markers on a road he has no choice but to follow. When he arrives, the diner is lit softly from within, its lace curtains glowing faintly against the night. The bell above the door chimes as he enters, the sound strangely comforting this time, though it still makes his breath hitch. The diner is quiet, only a couple finishing coffee, the waitress wiping down the counter. Evelyn sits exactly where she had been before, as though she hasn't moved all day. The pie remains on the table, smaller now, a slice missing though still mostly untouched. She looks up as he steps in, no surprise flickers across her face, only that steady patience. Michael approaches, slower this time, less certain. He stops by her table, resting his hand lightly on the chair back before sitting down. His chest is tight, his throat dry. For a while neither speaks, the hum of the ceiling fan and the faint clatter of dishes in the kitchen fill the silence. Then Evelyn says quietly, "You came back." Michael exhales, his voice low. "I don't know why." Her gaze softens. "Maybe you do." He looks down at the table, the scratches, the worn wood, the faint stickiness near the edge, details ordinary, grounding. Yet his thoughts won't settle. "This doesn't make sense," he says, shaking his head. "None of this makes sense." Evelyn folds her hands, her fingers trembling faintly but her posture steady. "Not everything that matters does." The words land heavier than he expects. He presses his hand against his temple, closing his eyes briefly. In the darkness, the memory returns, strawberries cooling on a windowsill, sunlight warm on the floor, the sound of a woman humming as she worked. He feels the ache again, deep, undeniable. He opens his eyes quickly, staring at the pie between them. The smell is faint now, but still there, stubborn, insistent. Evelyn breaks the silence. "I baked one every year. Even when I had nothing else, just in case." Michael's breath catches. "In case of what?" "In case you came home." The words strip him bare. He leans back, his hands gripping the chair arms tightly. His jaw locked. For years he has built walls, thick and unyielding. But here in this quiet diner, a single sentence fractures them. A child's voice breaks across the room. The little girl at the counter tugs her grandfather's sleeve and says, "Grandpa, look, she made pie." Her words are innocent, unknowing, but they pierce Michael more than Evelyn's. The grandfather chuckles, patting her hand, and answers softly, "Yes, sweetheart. Looks good, doesn't it?" Michael stares at the girl, her wide eyes, her unguarded curiosity. It's a mirror of something he once was, something he buried. His throat tightens, he rises abruptly, pacing toward the window. His reflection stares back, faint against the glass, overlaid with the night outside. He presses his hand against the cool pane, the scar pale against the dim light. His breath trembles. Evelyn doesn't move. She doesn't chase him with words, she simply waits, her presence steady, quiet. At last, Michael turns back, his voice low, strained. "If this is true, if any of it is, why now? Why after all these years?" Evelyn's eyes glisten faintly though her voice stays even. "Because you stopped long enough to smell the pie." The words break him, his shoulders sag, his breath stutters. The unraveling he has resisted all day surges through him, unstoppable. For the first time in years, Michael feels something close to surrender. The diner has grown quieter still, the couple in the corner leaves, the bell above the door chiming softly as they step into the night. The waitress gathers cups and wipes tables, her humming low and steady, like a song only meant for herself. The place feels suspended, time slowed to a fragile pause. Michael stands by the window, his hand still pressed faintly against the glass. The scar shows pale against his skin, the faint reflection of it doubled in the pain. He lowers his hand slowly, his chest rising and falling in uneven rhythm. He turns back toward Evelyn. She hasn't moved. Her posture is weary but composed, her hands folded gently before her. The pie sits untouched between them, its crust sagging with the hours, the sweetness now faints but lingering. Michael moves back to the table, and lowers himself into the chair again. His movements lack the precision they usually carry, his hands hesitate, his jaw slackens, his eyes heavier now. For a long moment, neither speaks. Then Evelyn breaks the silence, her voice soft but steady. "Every year I baked one, even when I had no oven of my own. Someone would let me use theirs, or I'd find a church kitchen for an afternoon. I told myself, if he came back he would know. He would remember." Michael swallows, his throat dry. His voice comes low, quiet. "You can't know it was me." Evelyn's gaze lifts steady on him. "I don't need to know," she says gently. "I remember." The words unsettle him more than certainty would. He shifts in his seat, fingers tapping restlessly against the table before curling into a fist. His chest feels heavy, the air pressing harder in the quiet. He thinks of his life, boardrooms, contracts, numbers stacked higher than he could ever count. All precise, all ordered, all certain. But here in this small diner, with this frail woman across from him, certainty feels like something he can no longer trust. His voice cracks slightly when he speaks again. "What if you're wrong?" Evelyn leans forward slightly, her eyes warm but unwavering. "What if I'm not?" The simplicity of it halts him. He presses his hand to his forehead, eyes closing. Images push through, the kitchen again, faint and fragmented, but sharper now. The check curtains, the sunlight, the smell of berries thick in the air. A laugh, gentle, a voice calling his name. His breath stutters, he opens his eyes quickly, staring down at his scar. He lifts his hand, turning it as though seeing it for the first time. The memory of heat, of pain, of small hands reaching for comfort, it floods him with a clarity that terrifies him. He speaks barely above a whisper, I remember." Evelyn's lips tremble faintly, though she steadies them. "Then you know." The words hang in the air, fragile, certain. Michael's throat tightens. He looks up at her, really looks, the silver hair, the lines etched deep around her eyes, the trembling hands. Years of hardship are carved into her. Years he cannot account for. And yet beneath it there is something unchanged, something he recognizes not with logic, but with a part of himself he has spent decades trying to bury. The waitress pauses near their table, glancing at them briefly. She seems to sense something unspoken, something heavy, and quietly moves on without interrupting. The ceiling fan hums softly overhead. Michael reaches out without fully realizing it. His hand hovers above the pie before pulling back, hesitant. "I don't know what to do with this," he admits. His voice raw. Evelyn's eyes soften further. "You don't have to know, you just have to sit. Share a piece, let it be enough for now." Her words feel impossibly simple, but in them, Michael senses a path, a small step, not a leap. His chest tightens again, but this time with something closer to relief. He nods once, almost imperceptibly. His hand reaches forward again, steady now, and breaks the crust with the fork resting beside the plate. The sound is small, ordinary, but it feels monumental. He lifts a piece, the red filling glistening under the low light. He takes a bite, the taste floods him, sweet, tart, warm despite the hours that have passed. It is familiar in a way he cannot deny. His eyes sting, though he blinks quickly, his composure slipping. He eats slowly, deliberately, each bite carrying memory with it. Evelyn watches, her expression quiet, her eyes glistening faintly. She does not press him with words, she only waits, her presence steady. When he finishes, he sets the fork down carefully, his hands trembling faintly. His voice comes low, "I don't know if I can fix what's been broken." Evelyn leans closer, her hand brushing lightly against his across the table. Her touch is fragile, feather-light, but it steadies him more than he expects. "You don't fix it all at once," she says gently. "You just come back, one step at a time." Michael's gaze drops to their hands, the contrast stark, his sharp manicured, hers weathered and trembling. Yet the connection feels undeniable. For the first time in years, he feels something loosen inside him. The walls, the armor, the certainty, it all falters. What remains is fragile, uncertain but real. He draws a slow breath, his chest rising with something closer to surrender than defeat. And though the night outside deepens, the diner feels brighter, warmer. The night deepens beyond the diner windows, the street outside hushed except for the occasional hum of a passing car. Inside the quiet feels different now, no longer a weight pressing down, but something softer, steadier. Michael sits across from Evelyn, the empty fork resting on the plate between them. The taste of strawberries lingers on his tongue, faint but insistent, a reminder he cannot push aside. His chest feels heavy, but not in the same way as before. It is not the pressure of denial, or the strain of control. It is the weight of recognition, of something long buried, rising back into the light. For a while, he doesn't speak. His hands rest against the edge of the table, fingers curling faintly as though holding on to something invisible. Evelyn watches him quietly, her posture tired but unbroken, her presence steady as a candle's flame. Finally, Michael exhales. His voice comes low, rough at the edges. I spent years convincing myself the past didn't matter, that the only way to survive was to move forward, never look back. And yet, he pauses, his throat tightening. Here I am, sitting in front of you, eating the one thing I swore I didn't remember. Evelyn's lips tremble faintly, but she steadies them, her voice gentle. Memory has its own way of waiting, sometimes longer than we expect. Michael nods slowly, his gaze fixed on the pie. His thoughts unravel, spilling faster than he can contain them. I built walls, around everything. My life, my heart. I told myself it was strength, but maybe. His voice trails off. He swallows hard, his jaw tightening before he finishes. Maybe it was fear. The admission hangs between them, fragile, raw. Evelyn doesn't rush to fill the silence. She simply folds her trembling hands together, her eyes glistening faintly in the low light. You were a boy, she says softly. And boys grow into men who learn to protect themselves. Sometimes too well. Her words strike deeper than accusation ever could. Michael lowers his head, pressing a hand to his face briefly. His shoulders sag, his breath uneven. For years he has held himself upright, unyielding. Tonight, he feels the cracks widening. When he lifts his gaze again, his eyes are damp. He doesn't wipe them, doesn't hide them. He lets the weight of them remain. His voice breaks slightly as he speaks. I'm sorry, for the years, for not looking, for pretending you weren't out there. The apology is rough, clumsy, but true. Evelyn's eyes shine now, though she doesn't weep. Instead, she reaches out across the table, her hand brushing his. Her touch is light, fragile, but it steadies him more than he expected. You don't owe me apologies, she says softly. You owe yourself forgiveness. Michael swallows, his throat aching. His hand turns, his fingers curling around hers carefully, as though afraid she might break. For a moment they sit like that, hands joined, time stilled, the world narrowed to this small connection. The waitress passes quietly, refilling a mug at the counter, her glance lingering on them just long enough to soften with something like understanding. She doesn't interrupt, she moves on, her presence a quiet witness. Michael draws a slow, shaky breath. I can't give back the years, he admits. But I don't want to keep losing what's left. Evelyn nods faintly, her lips curving in a tired but genuine smile. Then don't. The words are simple, but they open something in him. For the first time in decades, Michael feels the possibility of change, not in contracts or acquisitions, but in something smaller, more human. He glances at her coat draped over the chair, worn thin, the seams frayed. He sees the lines of exhaustion carved deep into her face, the tremor in her hands. The life she has lived in his absence is etched visibly on her. A sharp pang of guilt cuts through him, but alongside it, something else grows: resolve. I want to help, he says, his voice firm now, not just with money, with whatever it takes. Clothes, a place to stay, doctors if you need them. He hesitates, then adds, quieter, but more than that. I want to be here. Evelyn studies him, her gaze soft but searching. Are you sure? Michael nods slowly, his jaw set. For the first time in a long time, I am. The hum of the fan above fills the silence that follows. The pie between them cools further, but it no longer matters. What matters is the weight in Michael's chest, shifting slowly into something lighter. What matters is Evelyn's hand still in his, her presence steady, her eyes carrying the kind of forgiveness words can never fully express. At the counter, the little girl with her grandfather looks over again, curious. She whispers, "Grandpa, are they family?" The grandfather glances at them, then back at his granddaughter, and answers quietly, "Maybe they always were." The child smiles, satisfied, and returns to her coloring book. Michael hears the words, and his chest tightens with something close to relief. He squeezes Evelyn's hand gently, the smallest of smiles tugging at the corners of his mouth. It is not triumph, it is not certainty, but it is something he hasn't felt in years. Hope. Weeks pass, measured not by contracts or deadlines, but by smaller things, shared meals, walks along quiet streets, conversations that drift without urgency. For Michael, time feels different now, not a currency to spend or hoard, but something to be lived, moment by moment. He has arranged more than the basics. Evelyn has new clothes, simple but warm. A doctor has seen her, offering medicine and steady care. Yet these gestures, important as they are, feel secondary to what matters most: the hours they spend together, rediscovering a bond neither of them thought would return. This evening, the car turns down a narrow lane on the edge of town. The road dips gently, lined with old trees whose branches arch overhead, their leaves turning with the season. At the end of the lane, a house stands. The paint is fresh, the porch steps repaired, the windows polished. It is not large, not grand, but it breathes with memory. Evelyn sits beside him, her hands folded loosely in her lap. She looks out the window, her breath catching softly, when the house comes into view. Michael slows the car, parking by the curb. For a moment, he doesn't move. His hands rest on the wheel, his chest tight with something he struggles to name. He looks at her, at the way her eyes glisten in the fading light. "This was ours," she whispers. He nods. It still is. When they step out, the air carries the faint scent of cut grass and earth cooling with dusk. Evelyn pauses at the gate, her hand brushing the wood as though testing if it is real. Her fingers tremble. Michael stands close, steady but quiet, letting her move at her own pace. The porch creaks softly beneath their steps. Evelyn runs her hand along the railing, tracing the grain of the wood. "Your father painted this once," she says, her voice almost a murmur. "He cursed the brush for dripping." Michael listens, his chest aching. He can almost see it. The man on the porch, a boy watching from the steps, the sound of laughter filling the space. Inside, the air smells faintly of new paint and wood polish, but beneath it lingers something older, like the memory of warmth folded into the walls. Michael had the house restored carefully, preserving what could be saved. The kitchen window still wears its checkered curtains, newly sewn but patterned the same as he remembered in fragments. Evelyn steps into the kitchen slowly, her breath catches again when she sees the counter. A pie tin sits there, empty for now but waiting. She presses her hand against the surface, steadying herself. Michael stands near the doorway, watching quietly. He feels the urge to speak, to explain how he tracked down the property, how he arranged the repairs, but he holds the words back. Explanations feel unnecessary here. What matters is the look on her face, the way her shoulders ease, the faint curve of a smile that has been absent for too long. Evelyn turns, her eyes meeting his. "You brought me home." Michael swallows, his throat tight. "I brought us home." She nods, her gaze softening. Her hand trembles as she pulls a small bundle from the bag she carries. She unwraps it carefully, revealing fresh strawberries. Imperfect, a little bruised, but red and sweet. "I thought we might try again," she says quietly. Michael steps forward, placing the bundle on the counter. He reaches for a bowl, for a knife, his movements unfamiliar but deliberate. Evelyn watches him, her smile faint but real. The evening deepens as they work side by side. Michael slices the fruit, Evelyn guiding him with gentle words. Sugar is sprinkled, dough rolled out. The oven hums, the warmth filling the kitchen. Ordinary steps, yet each one feels monumental. As the pie bakes, the scent rises slowly, curling through the air, sweet, warm, familiar. Michael leans against the counter, his arms crossed loosely, watching as the crust turns golden. Evelyn hums softly, the same tune he remembers faintly from long ago. When at last, they sit at the small kitchen table, the pie cooling between them, Michael feels something he hasn't in years. Not the rush of victory, not the steel of control, something quieter, belonging. He takes a forkful, the taste carrying memory and newness at once. He closes his eyes briefly, breathing in the sweetness. Evelyn watches him, her hand resting lightly on the table. "Do you still like it?" Michael opens his eyes, his voice low but certain, more than ever. Outside, the trees sway softly in the evening breeze. Inside, the kitchen glows warm with light and the scent of strawberries. A son and a mother sit together, not as strangers, not as fragments of a broken past, but as family, returned at last to where they began. And in the quiet that follows, Michael realizes, this is what wealth has always meant. Not towers of glass, not contracts or numbers. But this home: forgiveness, the simple sweetness of strawberry pie.